Hi, I'm Lou. Are you confused as to how forest school fits into the bigger picture? Well, in this video, I'm going to introduce some thoughts around the wider world of outdoor learning and how forest school fits into it. So outdoor learning is an umbrella term that covers all sorts of different activities and different approaches of working with people outdoors. It's not a new thing. For hundreds of years, different educationalists have been promoting the benefits of getting outdoors with people, both for learning but also for health and well-being. In my opinion, all outdoor approaches are really valuable for people, and we want to be trying to promote them as much as possible. However, different approaches are designed to do different things. They have different aims and outcomes. So, for example, environmental education, that's really good at helping people understand the world around us and about some of the environmental issues that are happening. Bushcraft is really good to help develop outdoor living skills and to help us live sustainably outdoors. Horticulture is really brilliant about understanding how plants grow and how to care for them and to grow our own food. So they're designed to do lots of different things. Forest school is just one approach under the bigger umbrella of outdoor learning. And forest school is also very good at doing what it's designed to do, which is to build confidence and self-esteem and emotional resilience in people. So as outdoor practitioners, it's really important that we understand what we're trying to achieve with the people we're working with, so we can pick the right approach for what we're aiming to do. It's also important to recognise that these approaches are not mutually exclusive. In fact, I believe the more the merrier. So as an example, when I was teaching in a primary school, we used to go out once a week for forest school, and we recognised that was important for the children's social emotional development. But I also used to go out for curriculum-based outdoor learning. So I went out for maths lessons, for literacy lessons. We went out as much as possible. I also had early years children in my class, so we had free flow indoor-outdoor provision where we were trying to use the outdoor garden space as much as the indoor space. And we also had a little growing area, so there were some elements of horticulture that were also brought in. So the children understood different approaches were for different purposes and different reasons. And what I noticed was that the children were bringing in their learning that they'd learned in their maths lesson to forest school, for example, and they were starting to make sums with sticks one day, or they were starting to look at the plants out in the garden and understanding that they were seeds germinating and growing because they'd seen those out in the woodland at forest school. So the more approaches you can use, the better, I think. And you don't have to pick just one and just do that exclusively, because they're all really important and valuable. So I want to introduce you to a few different outdoor learning approaches that come under this big umbrella. This is by no means a definitive list, so I apologise to the types of outdoor learning that I've missed off, but for the sake of time I've just picked a few of them. And I like to visualise outdoor learning like a big tree with branches reaching up to the sky, and there are different leaves on this tree, and each leaf is an outdoor learning approach, but they're all kind of connected, and some of them overlap more with others and are connected to them. So we're all part of one big outdoor learning family on this tree. So I want to start with environmental education. And environmental education has been around since the 70s, since there's been a greater awareness of perhaps what humans have been doing to our planet and how that's affected the ecosystems. So environmental education's main aim is to help people understand about the planet that we live on and some of the big cycles that take place, and probably also with a bit of a message about how we can live more sustainably and reduce our impact on the planet. Then there's field studies, and again, field studies has been around for a very long time, and I would describe this as being quite linked to science and geography in terms of its focus, and it often aims to be out there using different techniques to look at different habitats or different species and to measure them, gather data. You might have gone on field studies, field trips where maybe you were looking at sand dune succession, or you were collecting data by looking in quadrats, by sampling plants, for example. So there's often a scientific element to field studies and a practical application in terms of data gathering and understanding the habitats from a science or a geography perspective. Then there's adventurous education, and that covers things that might come under the brackets of sports and recreation as well. So activities like rock climbing or canoeing, kayaking, paddle sports. It could also include things like orienteering and exploring further afield. So anything that perhaps has a level of risk involved with it might come under this bracket. And so it's about encouraging people to take challenges that perhaps they wouldn't normally take in a supported way, and, you know, stretch themselves and see what they're capable of, because we know that that's beneficial to people's self-esteem and emotional growth. There's also team building and leadership activities that take place outdoors. Again, you might have gone on a school trip or somewhere where you had to solve problems together as a group, or help each other through an obstacle course, or climbing up a Jacob's ladder, or the low ropes courses or the high ropes courses. And this often involves an element of adventurous activity, but perhaps also including puzzles or problems that would require communication skills and for people to work together to get the most out of the activities. So then there's bushcraft, and so this involves living outside for an extended period of time, perhaps in a way that our ancestors or indigenous people might have done once upon a time. And so it often revolves around core skills of finding water and making it safe to drink, finding food, foraging, perhaps making fire for warmth, building shelters, those kinds of elements. In this country it was popularised by Ray Mears, and there's also Mors Kochanski in Canada who popularised the term bushcraft. But it's about living sustainably for an extended period of time. So it's very skills based, it's quite practical, it's how we live with the land. Then there's earth education, and earth education has been around since the 70s, created by Steve Van Marta in America, and it's now a global movement. And it's a response to environmental education perhaps not hitting the spot completely in terms of people's hearts and minds and hands. So it's like an alternative to environmental education that goes a bit deeper. And it's very much focused on the core ecological cycles of how our planet works, such as energy cycling, interrelationships, and those elements. And the way I describe it is it's often like a cross between environmental education and a Disney World. So many of the activities and programs are quite dramatic. They perhaps involve elements of being in character. They also usually involve a lot of props to create a really magical, transformative experience for the participants, but with the goal that people will hopefully live more lightly on the earth. Then there's Joseph Cornell's flow learning techniques, which he wrote the book Sharing Nature with Children, that perhaps some of you have come across before. And again, I think he wrote those in the 70s as well. And as I understand it from his history, he's American and used to work in summer camps in America and was responsible for the nature study part of the summer camp. And he very quickly realised that you couldn't just take people into nature and for them to see things, because perhaps they live so much indoors and sedentary lifestyles. They were so disconnected that they literally couldn't hear the birds' song. They couldn't notice the deer tracks in the path. And so he developed some activities that helped retune the senses and to become more acclimatized again to nature. And so his flow learning scheme is, he's in his books, he's broken the activities into 4 different sections. So there are awaken enthusiasms, there are focus attention, there are direct experience, and then there's sharing and reflecting. And he believes that if you do the activities in that pattern, in that cycle, then that's what forms this flow learning system, and it's more meaningful and a deeper experience for people. It's about direct experience and retuning in to nature. So there's Coyote Mentoring, which is relatively new in the UK, and I guess you could describe it as coming from indigenous wisdom of how perhaps traditional cultures might have educated their children. It's a very subtle approach. It involves mentoring rather than teaching. It involves asking good questions. The whole idea is that the learners don't really know what the mentors are doing, and are led gently through learning experiences and supported in a very subtle way. This technique's been popularised by, I suppose, Tom Brown Jr. and John Young and the 8 Shields Institute. I guess the main focus of Coyote Mentoring is to really forge a strong bond between the learner and nature. So it's about deep nature connection and also about forming communities. So deep nature connection also involves not just connecting with nature but also with each other. Horticulture. So perhaps this is an area that we're familiar with. Perhaps we grow lots of things in our garden already and with our learners too. So this is about primarily growing food and understanding how plants grow and how we can support that and everything that goes around it. So kind of food and farming, I suppose. Scouts and guides, of course, have been doing various elements outdoors for many, many years. I'm thinking particularly of their camps and you know, certain badges like their knot tying badge and making this and having sing-songs around the fire and all those sorts of things that the Scouts and Guides do could be counted under the umbrella of outdoor learning, of course. Early years free flow provision. So in the UK it's recognised that good early years provision would put equal emphasis on the outdoor environment as the indoor environment, and in an ideal world early years practice would also be as child-led as possible. So in good practice you'd allow the children to be able to choose whether they wanted to spend their time indoors or outdoors. And so perhaps in your outdoor space at school or in your nursery or your early year setting, you would make sure that you had elements that the children could engage with outside as well as inside. So early years provision is actually part of UK general education provision under the early years foundation stage, and it recognises that the outdoor space is beneficial for all areas of learning and development. Curriculum-based outdoor learning. So within the national curriculum in the UK, there's nothing to say that you can't take those lessons outside. In fact, I believe that you can do pretty much any subject outside, or at least part of those subjects outside, to create really inspiring and meaningful lessons. And as a teaching professional, it's something that we should all be thinking about doing, and it's something that you don't need any extra qualification to do. If you're a qualified teacher, you should be going outside for some of your lessons. But of course, the lessons on a curriculum-based outdoor learning lesson perhaps will be just planned in the same way. You'll have your learning objectives to be able to teach to them, and you'd plan it just like you would an indoor classroom lesson. It's just that you're taking it outside and using the resources outside. So this has a focus of meeting curriculum targets. And then finally, of course, we've got forest school, which we talk a lot about. And in the UK, we've had forest school since the early 90s here, and it's been spreading out. If you're interested about defining kind of what forest school is, do check out my video that explains that. I'll put that in the description bar below. But generally speaking, the main aim for forest school is that emotional development. It's building confidence and self-esteem, emotional resilience. And that's the main focus that drives forest school practice. That's the reason we're out there. So that's adding to the tree too. And so here we have our outdoor learning tree, or at least the beginnings of it. And as you can see, forest school is just one leaf amongst many. It's no better or worse than any others. They're all equally valuable, but they're all designed to do different things. So the important thing is knowing what we're trying to achieve and picking the right leaf for the job. So one of the myths around forest school is that there are these forest school activities, and that somewhere there is this big book of activities that just relate to forest school, and just all you have to do to run forest school is do these activities. I'm afraid I'm going to bust that myth for you, because that's not true. In fact, the truth is forest school has borrowed many activities from all these other outdoor approaches. So for example, if you've ever played Meet a Tree, which is the game where you're in pairs and one of you's blindfolded, and you lead the blindfolded person up to the tree and they have to feel it and remember it, and then you lead them away and then they have to go and find their tree. Well, that is actually one of Joseph Cornell's flow learning activities. That's from his book, Sharing Nature with Children. If you've ever played the game Rainbow Chips, which often is done as a slightly watered down version, where you get the paint cards from DIY stores and you give children the colours or the card colours, and they have to go and match the colour to the environment. Well, I'm afraid that that has actually come from Earth Education, and it's known as Rainbow Chips, and it's part of an Earth Walk process, which is actually bigger than just the activity itself. If you've ever done a sit spot or a magic spot in nature with your groups for reflection, well, a sit spot is actually a core routine of Coyote Mentoring, or it's called magic spots in Earth Education, but it's a very similar thing about having moments of solitude and reflection in nature. So we've borrowed skills from all sorts of different places. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, but the difference is it's not what you do, it's how you do it that makes it forest school. So, for example, another place we've borrowed a lot of activities from would be the world of bushcraft. You know, if you're lighting fires and you're cooking snacks on the fire, then you know that's a core skill from bushcraft. But it's something that perhaps we do every session at forest school. But perhaps at forest school we use fire in a different way to if we were learning about fire in a bushcraft lesson. So it's not the skill or the activity or the game that we do, it's how we're using it that makes it forest school. So I personally feel as forest school practitioners, we're really well placed to help communicate to other people about these different outdoor learning approaches and dispel some of the misconceptions that are out there. So knowing why I'm doing something and in what type of outdoor learning I'm doing it can be really useful to communicate to my managers, the head teacher, the governors, the parents, and explaining the difference between them and why. Again, there seems to be over the last few years some misconceptions around trying to take any type of outdoor learning and cramming it into a forest school shaped box and just putting a forest school label on it. And I think this is particularly common in the school sector rather than in other places. But, you know, all kind of curriculum-based outdoor learning, oh, it's forest school. But of course it's not. If I was doing a maths lesson and I was going outside to do the maths lesson, that's brilliant. You know, that's better than doing a maths lesson inside, but it's not the same as forest school. Because when I'm out there doing a maths lesson, I have a set of objectives. Say it's about number bonds to 10. I've got my learning outcomes that I want to try and achieve. Perhaps I've differentiated for the different learners' needs, and I've got activities planned that are hopefully going to support my learners to get to that end, to that goal. As opposed to forest school, okay, mathematical learning might happen at forest school. It often does because it's a great place for maths out here. But I can't go out there with that goal because forest school's about building self-esteem and emotional development. And if I go out there with a preset goal, it's not forest school anymore. Forest school gives learners choice over what they do. It allows them to freely explore. Me as a practitioner observes the learners and sees where their next steps are. So if I go out there and say, hey everyone, we're going to do number bonds to 10 using these sticks, that's not forest school anymore because you've just destroyed the process. So remember, all of these approaches are valuable. All of them should be celebrated. All of them help people learn, develop and increase well-being and health by being outside. But they're not all designed to do the same thing. So when you're out there, pick the right approach for you and for your learners and what you're trying to achieve. It may be forest school, but it might not be forest school, and that's okay, because they're all really valuable things. So if you'd like to find out more about any of the outdoor learning approaches that I've mentioned in this video, I've popped down some links in the description bar below that will help you. What types of outdoor learning have you tried? Have you tried other ones that I haven't had time to mention in this video? Do let me know in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, do hit the like and subscribe buttons so you can join me in the woods next time. And thanks for watching. Outdoor learning is an umbrella term that covers all sorts of approaches where we learn. Knowing your aim is the key before you head out to the trees.